Hey there folks, how you doing today? It is raining here in Southeast Texas like it often does, and so because it is raining, I decided to make this video today. Alright, so my plan for this afternoon was to go out and do some zeroing work with a rifle that I put together here a while back that I have not yet had a chance to zero in. Because of the heavy precipitation that we are experiencing, I decided not to subject the rifle or myself to any unnecessary saturation today. So that got me to thinking, because it had been a little while since I had wiped down all of my blued guns. So not too long ago, there was more than one of you that tried to shame me in one of my videos because I had let one of my old Klein hex wrench, pocket folding hex wrenches, get a little bit rusty. I'll try to find a picture of that and put it up here for you. You're talking about an old tool that spent most of its life in the toolbox on my pickup truck. And if I had to go out and replace it today, it probably wouldn't cost me much more than about 10 bucks. Well, for those of you that are better at preventative care and maintenance than I am, let me put your minds at ease. I do take quite a bit of care of my firearms. And so that's what I wanted to cover today. I wanted to show you what I do to prevent rust and corrosion on my firearms and find out what you do to prevent it on yours. So I have an assortment of different kind of guns out here on the table, and we're going to talk about them, and we're going to go over some of the stuff that I do to prevent this kind of damage to my firearms. For starters, as I always like to point out, all of these are safe and empty weapons, and I don't have any ammunition right here in my immediate workspace. Okay, so I picked these three firearms specifically because they all have different types of care in order to prevent corrosion. Let's talk about this old Mossberg 500. This particular shotgun is a very low-grade Mossberg 500. It had a Parkerized kind of finish on it when I first got it. And after about a year of living here in the north of Houston area, I noticed that this gun sitting in the corner of the area where it was at was starting to get a lot of flash rusting through the thin Parkerization that was on the weapon. So what I did was I completely disassembled it. I scrubbed it up really good. I sprayed it down with about 4 cans of non-chlorinated brake cleaner, and then I Duracoated the entire weapon. I just used some colors that I had laying around from a previous project. That's why it's this interesting green color. It has been a little over a year since I painted this particular firearm. The finish is still in very good shape, and it shows very little in terms of corrosion. Duracoat is not the answer for all firearms. In fact, if I can avoid it, I like to. But on something like a utility shotgun that's most often not kept in an area that is climate controlled, I'm less concerned with how it looks and more concerned with how it's protected. So for those of you that don't know what this is, suffice it to say it is a multi-purpose tool. It could be used for hunting, although it's probably not the best gun for hunting. It could be used for self-defense, although it's not really well equipped for that either. This gun is around here simply because it's got some nostalgia and a little bit of a cool factor. While I wouldn't want to be out in the rain with this particular firearm because of its wood furniture, the finish on this gun is more or less impervious to the kind of corrosion that I worry about around here. As a matter of fact, it has been years since I took this gun apart and completely cleaned it, and it looks pretty good. So I put this one out here as an example of a low maintenance firearm in that there's really very little that you have to do to protect this firearm from corrosion. Moving right along, what we have here is a 54 caliber TC Renegade. Aside from the personal nostalgia that comes from this, as I killed my first mule deer in New Mexico with this 20 some odd years ago, the fact that it was given to me by somebody who I admired greatly, and that person is not here anymore, adds to the fact that I give this weapon a considerable amount of care. This particular weapon has a blued steel receiver as well as some color cased hardened furniture on it that if you don't keep it in a climate controlled area and if you don't regularly wipe it down with oil, has a very strong tendency to rust. This particular one still looks pretty good because I take very good care of it. So what kind of steps do I take to care for a blued steel weapon in this environment? So unless I have taken it out to fire it, what I normally do with this weapon is every few months, I'll spray it down lightly with some spray aerosol rim oil or break free. I give it a light spray, I wipe it down with a soft rag, and then I put it back into a climate controlled area. And we're going to cover that right now. All right, so this cabinet right here, which is where I keep this old TC Renegade, is protected by a picture of a deer my little girl drew, a porcelain baby Jesus that I rescued from the lawnmower, and back here behind all these rifles, an electric heating element that helps to keep the air dry inside the cabinet. It works pretty good. Yeah, moving over here to the large safe, I'll show you how I dehumidify it. Just kidding, you don't get to see inside there. What's for dinner? Well, it's these little blue silica beads and these fancy little volcanic rock that came in desiccant pouches inside some furniture that we bought a few years ago. And I bring them over here and I put them in the oven at about 295, 300 for a few hours every couple of months to dry them out. Then, using this very same spoon, I fill a bunch of old socks up with the mixture and I place it in strategic areas inside that other safe. And that does a pretty good job of keeping the moisture down inside the box. So now I realize to most of you it probably seems a little overly simple what I do. A little spray of some gun oil on a rag, pick up a gun or a magazine, and give it a little wipe down. Don't go crazy. You don't have to do it once a week. I don't do it very often at all. But I do it often enough that I stay on top of any kind of corrosion issues. These magazines are all very old 1911 magazines. They have some minor pitting on them. They do what they're supposed to. So there's one more kind of firearm that I wanted to cover with this before we close this video. And that is your everyday carry piece. Folks, this is a safe and empty weapon. This Taurus GX4 has a really, really good coating on it. I have never done anything to this pistol as far as preventative maintenance for rust control, and it has no rust on it. My Ruger Max 9 that I purchased at about the same time that I got this one has significant rust on the slide. So it requires that I wipe it down with oil as well. I may eventually do a Duracoat on the slide of that Max 9. I bring that up to tell you that technology has advanced so much in the finishes on guns that a lot of these everyday carry weapons, your Glocks, a lot of guns like that really don't need much in the way of rust control. This is usually the point in the video where somebody starts typing away with their opinions on how to build a better mousetrap. I'm completely okay with that. But with keeping this short, I'm going to let you go for now. Take care. God bless. In a highly technical fashion, I utilize a spoon to fill the sock till it's about that full.
And I tie it off and throw it in the safe.
None of that made any sense.